Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of pain and betrayal until one act of courage gave you the power to break free? This is my story. My name is Evelyn, and at 40 years old, I discovered that the patterns of abuse in my family didn't have to define me until I found the strength to confront them, heal my wounds, and rewrite my legacy. I grew up in a household where violence was normalized. My father was a man ruled by anger, and my mother was his silent victim, a woman who endured years of emotional and physical abuse without ever speaking out. As a child, I learned to tiptoe around their fights, doing everything I could to avoid drawing attention to myself. I told myself that if I stayed quiet, if I followed the rules, maybe things would get better. But deep down, I knew the truth. The cycle of abuse wasn't going to stop. It was only a matter of time before it consumed me too. As I grew older, I vowed to escape the life I had known. I worked hard in school, earned scholarships, and moved to the city as soon as I graduated. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I built a career, made friends, and started dating someone who seemed kind and supportive. His name was Daniel, and for a while, he made me believe that love could be safe, that it could heal the wounds of my past. But slowly, the cracks began to show. At first, Daniel's behavior was subtle. He'd criticize the way I dressed or accuse me of flirting with other men when we went out. I dismissed it as insecurity, telling myself that everyone has flaws. But over time, his jealousy turned into control. He demanded access to my phone, monitored my every move, and isolated me from my friends and family. I tried to reason with him, to remind him of the love we once shared, but his anger only grew worse. Then, one night, everything changed. After a particularly heated argument, Daniel hit me. It wasn't the first time he had raised his hand, but it was the first time I realized that I was becoming my mother, a woman trapped in a cycle of abuse, too afraid to leave. I spent hours sitting on the floor of our apartment, staring at the wall, replaying the fight in my mind. How had I let this happen? Why hadn't I seen the signs sooner? But as the sun rose, something inside me shifted. I thought about my mother, the years she had spent enduring my father's rage, and realized that I didn't want to live like her. I deserved better. That morning, I packed a bag, called a friend, and left Daniel for good. Leaving wasn't easy. There were moments when I questioned whether I had made the right decision, when loneliness and fear threatened to pull me back into the cycle. But I reminded myself of why I had left: to break free, not just for myself, but for future generations. If I stayed, the abuse wouldn't end with me. It would continue, passed down like a toxic inheritance. Determined to heal, I sought therapy and joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence. Through those sessions, I began to unpack the trauma of my childhood and understand how it had shaped my choices as an adult. I learned that staying silent hadn't protected me, it had only enabled the abuse to continue. I also realized that breaking the cycle wasn't just about leaving Daniel. It was about reclaiming my voice, my identity, and my power. One day, during a group session, I met Sarah, a woman whose story mirrored mine in painful detail. She had grown up in a home filled with violence and had married a man who treated her the same way her father had treated her mother. When she shared her experience, I saw myself in her eyes: the fear, the shame, the overwhelming desire to escape. After the session, I approached her and offered my support. "You're not alone," I said, "and you don't have to stay." Sarah's gratitude inspired me to do more. I decided to volunteer at a local shelter for survivors of domestic violence, using my own experiences to help others find the courage to leave abusive relationships. Over time, I became a mentor, guiding women through the difficult process of rebuilding their lives. Together, we navigated legal systems, secured housing, and created plans for financial independence. Watching them regain their confidence and take control of their futures reminded me of my own journey and the strength I had discovered within myself. But helping others wasn't just about giving back. It was about healing myself. Each story I heard, each woman I supported, reinforced my belief that the cycle of abuse could be broken if we had the courage to confront it. And so, I founded an organization dedicated to empowering survivors of domestic violence. I called it Break Free, a name that reflected my journey of liberation and resilience. Through the organization, I provided resources, counseling, and advocacy to women navigating similar situations. I also launched educational programs to teach communities about the signs of abuse and the importance of intervention. One of the women I helped was Maria, a single mother who had been trapped in an abusive marriage for over a decade. When she came to us, she was terrified of leaving, convinced that her husband would find her and hurt her again. Together, we worked to secure a restraining order, file for divorce, and create a safety plan for her and her children. Watching her walk into her new apartment for the first time, tears streaming down her face, reminded me of the day I had left Daniel. It wasn't just about escaping, it was about reclaiming your life. Another woman, Rachel, shared a story eerily similar to mine. Her father had been abusive, and she had spent years trying to break free from the patterns of violence that had defined her childhood. When she learned about Break Free, she reached out for support. Together, we helped her navigate her emotions, reconnect with her sense of self-worth, and find closure. Her gratitude reinforced my belief that the work we were doing was making a difference, not just for individuals, but for families and communities as well. As Break Free grew, so did my sense of purpose. I realized that the pain I had endured wasn't just mine, it was part of a larger narrative, a systemic issue that needed to be addressed. By exposing the truth, I was able to honor the parts of my relationship with my parents that mattered most, the lessons they taught me about resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up for what's right. But building Break Free wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when I questioned whether I was strong enough to carry the weight of so many stories, so much pain. There were times when the memories of my father's rage and Daniel's fists threatened to overwhelm me, pulling me back into the darkness. But I reminded myself of why I started this journey: to create a better future, not just for myself, but for others. Through the women I met, I discovered something profound. Healing isn't a linear process. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painful. But it's also transformative. By sharing our stories, supporting one another, and taking steps toward change, we can reclaim our power and rewrite our narratives. That realization became the foundation of Break Free, not just as an organization, but as a movement. Looking back, I realized that my father and Daniel didn't just leave me a legacy of pain. They gave me the tools to transform it into something meaningful. Their actions forced me to confront truths I might otherwise have avoided, pushing me to grow in ways I never imagined. And while I'll never fully understand why they chose to live the way they did, I've come to accept that their choices don't define me. Instead, they've shaped me into the person I am today, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to make a difference. Through Break Free, I've learned that power isn't about control or revenge, it's about creating opportunities for others to thrive. It's about using your pain to fuel positive change, to lift others up when they feel like they can't stand on their own. And it's about recognizing that, no matter how broken you feel, you have the ability to rebuild not just your life, but the lives of those around you. If you're watching this and feeling trapped, remember, your pain doesn't have to define you. You have the power to turn it into purpose, to create something beautiful out of something broken. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more inspiring stories, and let's rewrite our legacies together.